All right, today we got Steve Poloni all the way from Los Angeles. Steve Poloni is a Canadian guitarist, composer, and educator living in Los Angeles, California. He has a doctorate degree in musical arts from USC's Thornton School of Music, as well as over 15 years of private and group teaching experience. In addition to teaching, Steve also composes music for TV, film, and commercials, and actively writes for shows airing on the Discovery Channel, NBC, and ABC. Steve has done music for TV commercials such as Xbox, Lexus, Toyota, Honda. He scored a season of the show The Chill, which aired on Quibi in 2020. His guitar work has been featured on Tyler Perry shows, The Walking Dead series. Steve also ran the backing track team for Fender Play for 5 years and currently works at Disney Music Group as an asset management specialist and manages audio for all frontline releases, all vinyl releases, as well as preservation and archiving of classic Disney audio. Steve Poloni, welcome to the Creative Hustle Podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for that intro. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, totally. No, well, thanks for being here. Where does this podcast find you?
Right now I'm in Los Angeles. I live just a little bit north of LA in Santa Clarita. But nice sunny day here. I'm originally from Toronto, so it's definitely nice to be out here right now when it's like feet of snow in Toronto and very cold. So appreciate the weather for sure.
Do you miss the cold weather and the hockey and all the stuff that?
No, I can watch hockey on TV. That's fine.
Okay.
And they have rinks out here, and it's crazy. SoCal's actually become a pretty good place for hockey. You got the Kings, you got the Ducks, and you got San Jose. So 3 pretty good teams, and then we have Olympics on right now. So I've been enjoying that. So it's not too bad. And the snow, it's fun now to go visit for like a couple weeks. And you get to see the nice, pretty snow. But then when you have to deal with like months of like slush and like living life in all the snow, that's when I'm like, I'm okay here.
Yeah, it's nice aesthetically, to look outside and see the snow and it's snowing. But if you have to go to work and commute through it or do any sort of outside work, it's a pain.
Yeah, the first snowfall's great, and then it's downhill from there.
Yeah, and then you're just ready for summer. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. You've got really, maybe we start with like grad school, because we graduated at the same time. I don't know if you remember that photo of us. We were sitting next to each other in graduation. But I know, during the final sort of year or two of USC, you were doing some film work. You had a home studio. Your roommate was a filmmaker. And I know you guys were starting to team up and work on some commercials and projects. So maybe let's start there and just kind of talk about your journey kind of after, from grad school and kind of continuing to get into the industry.
I mean, leading into grad school, the focus was guitar and guitar performance. And it was like, I want to be a sideman. I want to have my own stuff, into jazz fusion, playing all the notes. But then I think just, maybe aging a bit or years passing, influence change. And my 2 roommates at the time were filmmakers, so it sort of brought me into that world. So sometimes they'd sneak me on set just to check things out. And, all of a sudden they have a short and they need some music for it. So the first kind of experience I had just scoring a short film were just projects they were working on. And that's the funnest stuff, where there's really no expectation because you've never done it before and you're just having fun. And you're there, you're hanging, and all the apartments I had during grad school, there was some sort of recording setup in there, some sort of studio. Our living rooms were always just studios. He was also a drummer, so he didn't mind. He could set up his kit, and that was kind of priority. And then couches and TV or anything else, I don't think we had a kitchen table for the longest time because the studio takes priority. But we had a drum kit set up. Mm-hmm. So,
I remember that house that you and what was his name?
Daniel Gomez.
Daniel, that's right. Yeah, I remember that place you guys had. There was the drum set was right in the middle of the living room. I think you guys did have a TV, but I know like the centerpiece of the living room was like your kind of control setup, with your DAW and screen on the wall, and then you had the drum kit always in the center of the
Oh yeah, it
room.
was
So
definitely the studio desk and guitars priority. And we had the hockey net out in the driveway, so there's still the Canadian influence there. But no, that was great, and I think just being in that environment of like being able to always record or like turn it on, or just if you're hanging, like, hey, we got this idea. Okay, let's just lay it down, record some stuff. And I mean, I listened back to a lot of that stuff, and you're like, oh man, that didn't really sound that great. But at the time, it was great for us. And I think the only way you learn a lot of times is just doing it and just trying and failing. As long as you get better, like each mix or each recording you do, as long as it's better than the last, I think that's always the most important thing. But yeah, from there, meeting Daniel,
lifelong learner, and
yeah,
keep at it.
so that was the intro to that, and then all of his buddies are filmmakers, and that's how I kind of met someone who was involved with commercial music and a music house, and it's really about kind of who you know a little bit, and just meeting people who need music, and you're like, hey, I can I can write some stuff, I can record some stuff, I can play, and
So yeah, maybe talk about kind of how things evolve from there. So you're kind of getting work. You're starting to get work because you're just networking with people, and kind of one thing leads to the next. So talk about kind of the income streams of that work, and how it whether it's royalties or you just get paid for one-off sessions, and just kind of take us through like how you progressed through that thing after grad school.
yeah. So I guess during grad school, that really shifted my focus, and I really wanted to do music for film, for TV, commercials, anything like that. I really enjoyed recording and writing, composing. So during maybe the last year, I was doing commercial pitches. So basically what happens, they give you a call and they're like, hey, we have this spot, it's 30 seconds or a minute. And you're probably going up against five or more composers in that music house. And that music house is probably competing against another five or two or three music houses. So your pitch, and you'll maybe get a couple $100 for a pitch, and then if it lands, that's when it pays out. So I probably did from the year I ended grad school to the next couple years, like maybe a good 15 to 20 pitches before I landed my first big commercial. And I'll never forget that. It was this Xbox commercial, and it was this funk track. They gave me a reference track. A lot of times there's a reference track, so you really have to be careful. And they tell you like inspired by. So you can't take anything from the reference track because they can get into a lot of trouble legally.
Copyright.
Yeah, so you learn kind of different ways. I think sometimes a good way was just inverting the melody. That was always a useful way to kind of get inspired by. So you can keep a rhythm, but if you invert the melody, it's completely different. And then maybe change the progression a bit, change the key, a few things like that.
Yeah, just kind of mix up the recipe a little bit, so it's hard to covering your tracks.
Yeah, and I think the biggest lesson there was I had to simplify a lot, because we're coming from this world in grad school where you're playing the hardest jazz standards and you're having to change keys while you're blowing. Like, did you ever have lessons with Bruce Foreman?
I did, yeah. My first semester was with Bruce.
I think those were probably my most challenging lessons ever, because we'd be playing it, calling out key changes, like coming up on the next chorus, and you're like, up a fourth, and some of those mornings were early lessons after some late nights, so not always the most fun lessons, but it definitely like kicked you into shape. So coming from that, you get on a commercial pitch and you're like, oh, I can do all this cool stuff, but all they want is 1-4-5 sometimes. So I think that really taught me when you're composing and writing and recording to serve whatever it is, serve the content, serve the picture a lot. So I really had to scale back. And it really put a focus on how it sounds. So the recording quality and your mix and your master. So the couple years outside of grad school or just after grad school, I ended up moving back to Toronto for a couple years. And I spent probably 12, 14 hours a day just like trying to mix, trying to record, learning all the plugins, learning all that. Because largely in school, it was, we're focused on analyzing music and playing and all that great stuff that's so useful now. But I wasn't mixing songs daily. I wasn't recording people daily. So it was time to put to use all that knowledge of like, okay, how do you mic a drum kit? And how do you do this? And how do you do that? Or what's sidechain compression? How do I reverse reverb? And like, it's funny because at first you look up all these mixing tutorials and you're like, how to mix drums. And you find that one video and then you start mixing all your drums the same. So it's the same thing with writing or playing. You learn all of your lessons by making mistakes. So
yeah, you kind of have to develop like a vocabulary with it, just like you do with music.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's like it's not always the same. It depends on the context and the use case and who the audience is, and the genre and all that. Because like a kick drum sound for R&B is nothing like the kick drum sound for metal. Is nothing like the sound for like punk rock or just all the other varieties of genres of music, and there's sort of like cultural aesthetic for sounds and sonic things.
Yeah. Oh, and it's funny because all the advice I'd give now, it's just all the mistakes I made. And you try to tell, and I've taught a few people just with music production and some mixing lessons and recording lessons. And I tell them this and they don't believe me and they make the same mistakes. It's kind of like you see the flashy new plugins. And I did this for a while too, where like, I wanted to download all the new plugins. Any new plugin that came out, I need this in my mix. This will make my mix better 100%. And now everything's gone back to I just need an EQ, some compression, I can pan, some verb, and I'm good. But before it was like, no, I need this new Waves plugin that does this, and I need this new verb here, and everything's just drenched in reverb. So I'm like,
yeah. Do you find yourself, because nowadays, like I find myself using like the Reverb 7 band and the Bomb Factory, 1176 compressor. And I just find myself using those two plugins only. I have all the Waves stuff, all this other stuff, Slate Digital, like blah, blah, blah. And I just only use the basic like native Pro Tools plugins anymore.
Yeah, I could see that.
I'm so comfortable with them and they work. And like, I don't know, everything else is just kind of flashy and, sucks up CPU power.
I think I pared it down to a few UA plugins. And then I just love FabFilter and Sound Toys. I can do like everything.
Okay.
And FabFilter, I kind of just use the EQ and compression mostly. And then I use, the 1176, the UAD one. I use the LA2A a lot, those two compressors. And I use Valhalla Verbs a lot. The Valhalla Hall I think that one's free, which is amazing. And I use their room and plates and all the Sound Toys stuff. The Sound Toys saturations go on almost everything. Like I love I think it's the Devil Lock on drums or something, just a little bit. And it's just this nice saturation and crunch to it.
That's cool. So I've never messed with the Sound Toys.
Okay, so Sound Toys is like, if I were recommending a bundle, I'd say FabFilter, Sound Toys, and then you can pick and choose some of the UAD stuff. But that's gone through a weird change too, because I remember the whole thing was, you want all these Apollos and you want all these interfaces with all the processing power in them. So you need to get your satellites or quad core or whatever it is. But then they made all their plugins native. So, and computers are so powerful now where you don't really need the external processing with all these M3, M4 chips in Mac. So
yeah.
I feel like they've kind of gone down a little bit, but still great stuff.
Right. Yeah, and the whole thing with like latency and buffer size, like, I don't know, I just set it and forget it most of the time. If you got a newer computer, like there's not much latency ever.
Oh, it's so nice. And honestly, it's maybe been, I guess it's almost been a decade since we graduated. Coming up on a little bit tough to think of that.
2017.
Computing power and the change in like the tools available are just like crazy. Like I feel like it's come so far. I think at that time I was looking into, because all the composers they have they used to have slave machines and masters to run all the orchestral samples. I don't agree with that naming of those machines, but
I know we got to come up with a better name. I was having the same discussion yesterday. I was like, what else could we call that hierarchical sort of like this device is actually controlling this device,
yeah. So
better, 2026, right? We got to come up with a better name for this.
We got to come up with better names, but people would have multiple computers to run these orchestral sample templates. They'd have 1,000, 2,000 tracks, but you can do that now with a Mac. You throw whatever 100 gigs of RAM in one of the M4 Macs, and you can load up 1,000 VSTs and have all your articulations for strings, trumpets, and brass. Yeah, all of it. But it's crazy to think.
Yeah, the technology stuff is really just, I mean, even going back like further, like 20, 30 years, just being able to record high quality stuff at home on your own computer. Like you never used to be able to do that unless you had a bunch of gear, crazy expensive gear. And now like a laptop and a condenser mic, you can like put out some pretty good sounding music, especially if you are savvy with, the DAW and the plugins. It's it's hard to tell the difference between that and something that was, recorded in a studio. Unless you have really hi-fi, speakers and things that will help you define the difference. If you're just listening to music on your earbuds and your phone, like it all sounds good,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I were starting over now on a limited budget, I'd probably grab like a Mac Mini, a Scarlett, and then just whatever condenser, probably some like maybe an Audio Technica or something like that. Pretty cheap condenser, and you'd be able to do it all. And even with all the guitar stuff, I haven't recorded a live amp in like 3 years. I have my Kemper right here, and everything's been going through that. It's all modeling stuff, and it's pretty bonkers because I guess at that same time I was doing commercial pitches, I got into production music. So I was doing a lot of production music as well. So that I was doing like a lot of blues, rock. You got to play to your strengths. So anything guitar heavy. So there it's really convenient to be able to, here's a Marshall, and then I want to double that. Okay, now it's a Bogner. And just pick up a different guitar, different amp, other side, double track it. Okay, then I want my lead. Okay, Mesa Boogie. Pick up another guitar. Now I'm on the Mesa Boogie amp. So the modelers are really good for that style of recording and music because you can just change it up so quickly. And you can get doubles and they sound phenomenal. I know it, I guess if you're like, if you're playing as a guitar player and it's your like solo project, maybe you want to have your amp and your pedals and your sound. But when it comes to just tracking stuff. And it's pretty crazy. So when I record my guitars, I'll take a straight DI. I'll have the sound from just the amp dry. So whatever stack it is, it's just from the head. And then I have an effects loop with my pedals. So I'll get the wet channel. And then I think through the SPDIF out, I get a collected track of everything.
Okay, so do you combine those two wet dries in the amp modeling? You don't have like two tracks, like one dry, one
No,
wet.
I'll have it all. I'll have it all separate in Logic, so I can split that out. Because sometimes I'll end up just going with verbs or something in the box. So I got kind of spoiled with some of the reverbs and delays and stuff you can do, and it's just so easy to do it in the box with that stuff, and you can do all the fancy time delay things, and it's perfectly in your session, and so it's really convenient to be able to grab that dry track and mess around with it. But most of the time, I do use kind of the effects loops that I'm recording in, and I'll just blend that. And then you can also mix it, because out of your wet channel or wet track, you can cut a bunch of lows and just keep kind of the nice bits of that.
Yeah.
So makes things a little
Nice,
less
nice.
muddy. And then when you're recording for other people, to be able to send them all the options is great. Like even when I record bass, I'll go DI through. I have an Apollo here, so I'll run that through a UAD channel strip of like an Ampeg or something, and then I'll run another. I'll split it and go to my Kemper, and then have like a Fender stack there. So simultaneously, I'll record like 2 different bass sounds, and I try to usually make them fairly different, so they're useful, and then they can decide what they want. But it's all about options.
Yeah.
Totally. I see the utility in the amp modeling stuff. Just personally, what I'm doing now is mostly just playing with like my original Rock Band, and the live sound and the amps and the tones and the pedals. That's all kind of like part of all that. So, but it's a lot of work to like do a guitar recording session. Got all the pedals going, and I'm only going to route into the ones I actually need, so that I don't have my signal getting degraded by running through 5 pedals and the amp, and this Fender's kind of sound versus like a British sound or something else. It's just a lot of gear to fire up and move around and shift. So
well, and then
it's nice to just plug
if you're
and play.
gigging a lot too, and you're recording, then you're tearing pedal boards apart and having to put them back together. If you go to this gig or that, so it can get a little tricky sometimes. But I mean, just because I'm doing this modeling stuff doesn't mean I don't like amps. I just picked up this Laney kind of mini stack, which is pretty cool. I picked it up over the break, and it's sort of like a Fender, like on steroids or something. So it's pretty badass. But it's gear. I don't think we'll ever get away from gear as guitar players.
I love it.
Love it. Can't have enough. More gear.
More gear in the closet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just get it now to just display it behind me. That's that's the only reason.
Yeah. Cool. You've done a lot of library music where you kind of compose and you just kind of stockpile, cues or sounds or whatever that is. Let's talk about that, because I think a lot of our students at Front Range, where I teach, they that's kind of something that is really doable, to just start kind of building your library of sounds and cues, and also just developing your skills in that sort of sense as a composer. So talk about how you kind of like your journey through doing that, and how you kind of use that to monetize or get more work.
Yeah, I think maybe 2018 to 2022 is where I really focused on that. And I probably put about maybe 150 to 200 tracks in a bunch of libraries. So it started with working for this company called Pilgrim Media, and they do all the like Discovery Channel shows like American Chopper, Fast and Loud. It's all car and motorcycle stuff. So all the classic rock is really heavy there. So
Oh yeah, perfect. Blues, classic rock.
yeah. So a lot of that stuff, it was just kind of putting on those shows a little bit and just hearing what they do. And I think that's really important, is doing your research a little bit beforehand, because I would hear classic rock and I'd be like, oh, right, awesome, and just start ripping in solos. But then you put it on, it's like, oh, it's maybe a lot simpler than I thought it would be. And you have to kind of think about how it's going to be used. So for those, you get very specific instructions. You want very clear sections in your songs, because now there's not necessarily a dedicated person who's chopping up the music and using stems to place it in episodes. I think a lot of that work now is done by music or film editors. So it's guys who are editing all the shots together. They go into the library, so they very easily want to see where they can cut it. So all the songs have to end with like a very hard cut, like bam, and then you wait a bar, and then you do another hit that kind of fades out. But you also just want like A, B, C section. You don't really want repeating verse, chorus, because they don't need it. If they do need to repeat it, they'll just copy and paste themselves. So usually a lot of those cues are around a minute 30, and you try to get 3 distinct sections in there. And then if you can, try to put in a little rest or a quick little shot just before a section or coming out of a section. And then just try to vary them. So if you can, put a little bridge in there that quiets down a little bit or has a different vibe to it, or introduce a different sounding guitar. Because after seeing a lot of them played, it's usually like they use like 14 seconds of the track or 25 seconds of the track. Like it's very limited, so they're not using the whole track all the way through. So just try to give them different moments within each track that they can cut from. And then they're all agreements where you keep your writer's share and they take publishing, and it all gets paid out through PROs. So I'm still with SOCAN in Canada, and that's been great. I've had no need to switch to ASCAP or BMI. Those are the other 2 big ones in the States. So I did a bunch for them. I also worked for Burnett Music Group, and they did like Temptation Island, and I think they do Survivor and a bunch of those other reality shows. You'll see that reality shows are really where a lot of production music gets used. So I did stuff like that, and that was very, like, I think there were some elimination scenes that were just pads that you hold through. Yeah, so that was fun, and there are always different things. And it's funny with that one too. We did. I was working with a buddy on that, and our first 2 cues, we got comments of, you don't have to throw everything in every cue, because these were sort of orchestral type tracks. And I think when I started, like my session ended up being like 150 tracks, and I was layering strings and I was putting all this other stuff, and they're like, it doesn't need to be that complicated. You can chill. Like pretty much just like chill a little bit. These sound amazing, but you're not. And we were putting so much time into them, trying to get the mixes perfect and all that. And they're like, these are great, but chill. And then after
work harder, or work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think they know, like, you don't make a ton of money off these cues, and it doesn't come up front. So it's the type of thing that's great to do if you have a few extra hours and you can just kind of bang out a cue, and then you send it and forget it. And there's also, so these specific libraries, they were exclusive. So as soon as you make the track and send it, they own the master, and you can't do anything with that track anymore. They own it, they license it, they use it how they like. There's a couple other non-exclusive libraries out there, and then you retain your master. So you license it to them, but sometimes you just have to understand if you're sending cues to those. Like I have music on this website called Artlist, and it's great because they'll get your music out everywhere. Like I've been on Instagram and there's a Papa John's commercial and they hear my track, or like little things like that. I'm like, oh man, or you see your royalty statement and a track's playing in Romania or France or Germany, and you're like, oh, that's really cool. But all of a sudden that track is everywhere. So you kind of also have to be able to just separate yourself from some of this music and realize you're somewhat creating a product that you're sending out there. And then you also have to ask yourself if you want to keep it or if you're okay with not having the rights to it. So there's different, just make sure you read contracts and you read the fine print when you're getting into production music, just so you know what you're getting yourself into. Because if you give a track to someone and they're like, oh, I want to use it for this thing, or my buddy wants to license it, you don't own it anymore, so you can't license it to him. Whereas if it's non-exclusive, you can license it wherever you want, but understand that it's also being sent everywhere. So you can license it, but you have to let that person know it might also be played in a bunch of different places. So it might not be as unique.
Gotcha. So how do you get into that? Is that something where you kind of submit things to a library and then they pick from that, library, and all of a sudden you get tapped and then you start working for a project? Or how do you kind of like, how does somebody just, who wants to get into making library music, how do you get into that?
So there are a bunch of, trying to think of some names of some other libraries. It's been a while, but just look up like royalty-free music. A lot of it'll be submitting your music and portfolio 2 different places. But the 2 that I was writing specifically for, that was just through, excuse me, that was just through networking and just meeting someone. Like I met the guy I met a girl who worked with this guy, Phil, at Pilgrim, and she put me in touch. And then he's like, yeah, we do this. And I manage all the music and signed a contract with him and started sending him tracks. Now, that one, I didn't mind that it's exclusive because I know it's going straight into episodes and it's being used. And then I think the other one, the guy I was working with composing for Burnett, he met him at a conference and he kind of formed that connection. So it really is still about getting out there, trying to meet people who don't do what you do. So meet people in film, meet people in licensing, like anywhere you can go where there are other creatives. Networking is still key. And I know there's a ton you can do now on social media and you can market yourself and you can send emails all day long, but there's still something to be said about in person and making a real connection. And a lot of the commercial stuff I was doing was with a company called Animal Music. And since then, they've split off and start their own thing. But that was someone I met through Daniel. And then he would come to the apartment and we'd hang. And then we'd jam because we had the jam space. So he ended up bringing other people from his company just because it was a place to jam in LA that we didn't have to pay for. And I mean, you came to that apartment. We made so much noise there and no one cared. It was just in this back alley. So it was a great spot. We'd have people over, we'd jam, have some drinks, get some pizza, whatever. And it's just through that's been a decade.
Play some hockey in the driveway.
Yeah, exactly. And through that, it's been a decade-long relationship of, like, I still pitch for him. Like, I think the last one I did was a couple months ago. So it still really is about
That's cool.
those connections.
It's kind of still like it was back in the day. Yeah, meeting people face to face and showing up and hanging, like it's still like such a big part of getting into these spheres.
Yeah. So that was a lot of it. And
you started working with Fender Play. Why don't you talk about that that gig and that sort of relationship and what type of stuff that you were doing with Fender Play?
Yeah, that was a really interesting and really specific job, which somehow I think that I was perfectly qualified for because I was writing a lot of guitar and bass and ukulele lessons. So I joined a team of guitarists and educators, and we pretty much built the Fender Play platform. And at the time they were doing, I joined in, I think, 2019, and they've already been going for a couple of years at that point. So I helped them build out these learning paths. So they had different genres, and then they structured it up to like level 5, and we were working on expanding it to level 7. And that was really interesting because that was my first time sort of working for a larger corporation and, being a part of Fender, this big company. So it was really cool, but it was all contracting work, and I was at home working remote. So I was still in my studio at home working most of the time, but you hop on calls with everyone, and it's good to have a sounding board. But you'd get into discussions on like syncopation, like how to define syncopation. When do you define syncopation in like when someone's learning guitar? Or can I show them this riff if we haven't introduced eighth notes yet? And then half the people saying, well, yeah, because you can just show them. And then half the people saying, well, no, because we can't notate it. So there'd literally be like hour-long arguments of like, no, let's show them Smoke on the Water. I don't care if they can't read a syncopated eighth note or something like something stupid. Well, how did you learn? Someone just showed you. But so it got really into kind of the nitty-gritty. But maybe halfway through, I was starting to do some recording for them. I think Matt Lake, my boss at the time, knew that I did some of this recording and was composing and doing all that stuff. So there were some specialized lessons, and he's like, you want to make the backing tracks. So they were using MIDI guitar, bass, drums that whole time, and they were horrible. Like backing tracks sounded like garbage. So I'm like, please, let me just make some better sounding backing tracks for you. So literally even just strumming chords, simple bass line. And then I would program drums, but use like Steven Slate, and then actually just change some of the levels or make it a little bit more humanized. And it would take 2 seconds, easy stuff to do, but it was such a big change. And he used these lessons to sort of pitch, well, let's start doing these live recorded backing tracks for all of our lessons. And sometimes we'd have full song transcriptions and all that. So eventually I started recording backing tracks for them and full backing tracks. And then we got a few other people involved. And so I kind of ran that area of it for a little bit. But it was great. I think near the end, so eventually I think they just died down. They didn't want to keep funding Fender Play because we had about 30 people working on it, like transcribing, making lessons, and each lesson would go through like this huge review process. And then they ran 3 studios pretty much working full time, recording lessons and recording the on-screen instructors. And they had, the whole camera department, sound department, they had editors, they had everything there. And I think it's still running just at a reduced level now. But we had 4 or 5 other guys going with backing tracks. And near the end, we got a license for Metallica's catalog. So I spent about 6 months to a year just recording Metallica backing tracks, which was, it was fun, but there's some days you're like, all right, I have to be thankful for this job. But yeah, some days it got a little monotonous, but
lots of.
I will say I got my right hand into shape though.
I bet.
So I think there were a few where I had to like cheat it a little bit, where I'd record like 10 BPM slower and speed it up because Whiplash or some of the early Ride the Lightning stuff is just like crazy. Or Kill 'Em All. Some of the Kill 'Em All rhythm parts are just like lightning fast, but
Yeah.
That was some fun.
Did you do a lot of copy and pasting and duplicating just to like fill out?
Exactly.
Sure.
When they all repeat, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's get this 4 bars right. Okay, come on.
Yeah, exactly. But that was awesome. But I wouldn't have had that if I didn't get into recording, if I didn't have that background already. Because even coming from all the production music, I was able to set up templates in Logic. So I'd literally record in, pretty much turn on the plugins and bounce. And then I'd stem everything out as well. So you'd have guitar separate, bass, and then all the different pieces of the drums so they can mix it in post. But being efficient in that stuff when you're recording, even with all the production music, you really get into saving presets, having your templates set. Like right now, even if I needed to record guitars, I open up my guitar template and it has maybe 4 or 5 tracks for electrics, which all have like substacks of, clean, wet or dry, wet. And then the summing track, I have all my acoustics set with kind of the plugins and how I would mix it and sending already to plate verbs, reverbs, and then some other aux tracks for my electrics and going into a stereo bus where I have sort of my go-tos. And you're not using everything on every mix, but to be able to just record it all in, turn on, adjust quickly, and send out is very valuable. So I think having all that prep done, well, especially when doing production tracks, is useful. And then just knowing how to record and all that stuff really helped me with Fender, because you make yourself more valuable the more skills you have. And then now when I record for other composers and I do just guitar work for them, it's really easy to just open up my session, and because and even with some of the commercial work, those commercial pitches, they'll call you in the afternoon and say they need it by tomorrow morning. And then all the other production music, I think I got it down to being able to write, record, mix, master, and send it out in about 4 or 5 hours. So being able to kind of pump out cues, it's like, that's also a skill you need, because they're maybe going to make, well, it really depends, but maybe the average like $1,000 to $1,500 for each cue over its lifetime. So some royalty statements you'll get 30 cents for a cue, but sometimes you'll get 500 for a cue, or like they all kind of add up and all that. But you never know, so you don't want to spend 2 days on something that's going to make you a dollar,
30
a dollar
cents.
50 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, working efficient, yeah, that is such a skill that you have to develop. And keeping things simple, like you were saying, that is, for me, I think that's like the hardest thing to do. When you just, yeah, you get started in the creative process and you kind of just start getting into it. And how do you budget your time? How do you kind of keep yourself from going down rabbit holes? I know you mentioned like having templates and stuff, and keeping things simple and not overcomplicating things. What's your kind of like, how do you kind of walk that line with knowing when to invest time into something, and then when to kind of move on and where to invest that effort and time?
Yeah, I think being able to take little breaks during the session to just kind of step back and like, okay, let me take a listen. And you make a couple quick notes of like, okay, well, it needs maybe a synth part here. Maybe I need to add a fill here. And you make just little quick things that are very specific. Like I want to do this, this, and this. And then I go back to it. And this is maybe in the composition process. So I always start, if I'm writing a cue, I try to lay it out all the way through. So I'll hop on a guitar because I'm a guitar player. And I'll just kind of like maybe 1 or 2 tracks, rough, get some chords in, maybe get a melody in. And then as quick as possible, once I have that set, record everything. Record guitars, get a bass line down, put a drum beat down, listen to it again. Okay, what does it need? Oh, I need a transition here, I maybe need an extra thing here. Write those down. And then you can check off 1, 2, 3. And then even in the mix, kind of go through each element, give it a rough mix, sit back, okay, and maybe get up, go somewhere else. Like once I'm done composing, I'll maybe leave the room and recording, come back and just try to start my mix fresh. I use, is it called alternate sessions in Logic? So it just makes it basically a duplicate session. So I'll record everything, have that set. I'll come back and I'll try to just clean it all up. So put all my fades, cut everything, and then start mixing. So if I'm in my template, I'll turn everything on one by one, each track, go through, maybe adjust some EQ, some compression, see where I'm at. And then if it's sounding okay, then do a few more tweaks and you're good to go. If not, go back. Maybe you have to add a little part. Maybe you have to do some experimental like mixing stuff or add some cool verbs or delays or something extra, but some automation. But I usually try to keep it simple. And I think just taking those little breaks and really keeping yourself focused, because if I'm like trying to pick a snare patch and it's been 15, 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, move on. Next. What's next on my list? And then you come back to it.
Yeah.
Because you might, okay, I'm going to go to something else. Next time you come back, oh, I like this snare. You'll be a little bit more decisive. So I try not to spend too long on like one specific task.
Nice. Are you pretty aware of time too? Like when you start a project, you kind of budget yourself. Where like, okay, I'm going to work on this for 4 hours. First half hour's this, next hour's this. Do you kind of try to do that and stick to a schedule as well?
Absolutely, because I want to sleep that night. Especially with those commercial pitches. It's like, okay, they want it by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning and it's 4 or 5 right now. I got to eat dinner and then I got to get started. So it's like, okay, well, from 8 to midnight, those are like my hours. So let me see what I can get done. And then at some point too, it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll leave like a final mix for the morning with fresh ears.
Yeah. It's so important to do that. Like I find myself when I get too sucked into something, I've been working on it too long. I just can't tell up or down, left or right, loud, soft, bright, dark. I just like start losing all sort of awareness of things, and I have to step away. And I find like I hear things like if I, like I've been working on this mix for a while or whatever, this song I'm producing, and then I'll just kind of loop it. And then I'll go into the other room and like work on something or do some housework or whatever, and just have that thing playing in the background. And then I'll hear like what it needs, like I'm not paying attention. I'm just vacuuming, or probably not vacuuming, but doing something less loud. And I'll just like hear this other part, or I'll hear like this thing that like makes me cringe a little bit. I'm like, oh, that's what I need. I need to fix this. Yeah, like writing it down, like you were saying, and stepping away. I think that's such a valuable tip.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious because I guess I'll do the same where I'll finish it and I'll just be excited that I finished it. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready for bed and I'm brushing my teeth. I'll play it on my phone and then I'll play it like repeated a few times and oh shit, maybe it needs this. Maybe it needs, do I got to do that too? Okay, I'm getting up a bit earlier tomorrow morning because I got to send another version tomorrow. I need to add this. Oh, that thing is too loud. So I will say I did cut out like the multiple referencing places. Like I'll maybe listen on my phone. But I spent a lot of time getting my setup right in my studio and getting things sounding accurate here. I also use Sound ID or SonarWorks,
Oh yeah.
which really helps. And, I have all my panels up around here and I dialed in my room. So, and do a lot of listening where you mix too. So just being confident in your listening room and your listening space, even if it's on a pair of headphones. If you just know what sounds good on those headphones, it can save you a lot of time. Like I used to do the car thing. So you bounce it, you send it to your phone, go listen in a car, go listen in a second car, your friend's car, listen on this, listen on that, make notes, come back. But after a while, you're like, I just don't have time for that.
Yeah, totally. So do you kind of like, you listen to a lot of music in your space? Like you get your speakers dialed in, you test the frequency imbalances in your space, you get that kind of corrected, and then you just have to spend a lot of time listening to a bunch of different music in that situation, in that same chair, and have your sort of benchmarks for like what's bassy, what's bright, what's kick and snare and cymbal sounds like in this space. Is that something that you spend a lot of time doing?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And then, working for Fender and doing all that, just being in the same room and like recording all day, playing guitar in that room, just being in there with music and with sound, I think really helps. And I think for especially your students, we'll see if they're going into this and doing this, that it's very easily going to consume you a little bit, and it kind of does. And if they're a bit younger and they're in their 20s and stuff, now's the time. Like invest that time, just go in on it. Like there's so many resources available now to learn outside of classes and just doing it. That's the only way you get better, is just doing it. Because I'm sure they can watch you mic something and watch you mix as much as they want, and that's how you learn. But unless they start doing it themselves and they go home and take that, let me try it out. And then I think just experimenting too, like if you're miking an instrument, take it, put it right on the cone, move it half a foot, record 4 bars, another half a foot back, record 4 bars, put the mic in the corner, record 4 bars, put a bunch of mics up and see what everything sounds like. And I think just experimenting and having time to experiment and doing that, like I find that fun. So that's what I used to do for fun. Yeah, and luckily they were my roommates, so no one's getting paid. We're all just kind of just hanging out. So no one can yell at you because you're taking too long to set up a mic. I remember in that apartment, I would always have a stairwell mic, and it was the best. And I'd put the stairwell that just smelled like hockey gear the whole time.
Hockey gear.
Sweaty hockey gear. Put it at the bottom there. I'm sure that smell really influenced the sound. 100%.
Yeah, you can smell the stink.
You can smell the stink in that mic. But that was my Verb mic for a long time. And then I'd put another one in the bathroom, like in the next room and stuff. So.
Oh, that's exactly what we've been doing in my second level kind of recording studio class. We, it's like, we have a lot of time, and I'm, the instructor, so I designed the curriculum, and we're kind of overhauling it and updating it all the time. So we've been doing these mic shootouts where we'll just try like 15, 20 different things. We did acoustic instruments last week, and we just like, let's put 3 mics on, different parts of the instrument. Let's put a mic like this far back. Let's put 2 mics way far back. Let's do the DI, and then this other thing, and then we'll like track, just like this instrument, this instrument, this instrument, this instrument, this position, this position. We're making these spreadsheets of like, dozens and dozens and probably eventually like hundreds of like different mics and different instruments and different placements. And then like the kind of like our sort of descriptions of the sound. And I mean, it's just like, that's how you learn recording. That's how you learn what mics sound like, and you develop your repertoire and your vocabulary of like knowing how to capture sound and what things sound like.
Yeah.
And I love the stairwell thing too, like having the mic, having the sound of the instrument from like super far back or in another room, or playing like, playing one of those tracks on a speaker in a hallway and then putting a mic at the opposite end and recording sort of just the reverb.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That natural chamber thing. If you have time and resources to do that, like that's what you should do to get better.
That sounds like the most fun.
It's so much fun.
It's so much fun. Yeah, because we have the time. In real life, like if you're working for somebody or have clients, like you can't do that, on their dollar. You have to have done that work ahead of time. So it's like, now's the time. Let's go crazy.
Again, with all of it, I think it always just comes down to the prep and practice you've put in, which is awesome. And it goes with everything. Like you're saying, miking and trying out all your mics and knowing what each mic sounds like and putting it where and how that'll affect this or that. But that's pretty badass. That's awesome. I want to take your class.
If you ever come out here and visit, like, I mean, could have you out as a guest clinician or guest speaker or something. So
nice. That'd be really cool.
If you ever want to come out to Colorado, you got a place.
Awesome. I'm sure there's some hockey there.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, there's actually hockey-wise, my neighbor over there is a big hockey guy. All the people I play softball with, they're all hockey players. They all play hockey on a hockey league. I was thinking about maybe getting into it, but then, I had a kid and I barely have enough time to practice my guitar anymore, so I don't see me starting hockey at age 44.
Yeah, plus you're fairly active. You got the snowboarding and biking.
Yeah, I do my best to get out there. But yeah, more hobbies is, I don't know if that's in the cards until I retire.
That's funny. I'm always the same way where last January I picked up a violin and a cello just because this school I was working at was just getting rid of some storage stuff. So $100, yeah, I'll take these instruments. I want to learn cello. I played it like twice since. Yeah. But I actually used the cello on a film score. And it was like my third or fourth time playing it, and I would just kind of find the notes and then lock my hand there. I'm like, okay, don't move that. Record. And then just make a bunch of noise. But it's crazy. It worked so well. And even with that, I think it, again, goes to show, like, recording instruments, recording live sound. Like, I have a whole bunch of orchestral VSTs, like some of the best ones that I've paid a lot of money for. But just having a cello here, and I don't even really know how to play cello, but the sounds, and it was sort of like a horror short film that I've been working on this year. I just made all these really cool sounds, and then, you pitch them down an octave, you distort them, you layer, you do all this other cool stuff. And that inspired pretty much like the base of the composition was off of this cello I bought for like $50 last year. So I think always experimenting, and I know there's splice, there's every VST, every instrument, every sample you can use, but I don't know, it's nothing compares to just grabbing an instrument, grabbing something and making that noise, and then you can mess up that noise yourself because that's you, that's more unique, and that's, I don't know.
Do you ever work with like samplers that, like, you would play a sound and then you throw it into the sampler and play it on the MIDI keyboard? Do you ever do that sort of stuff with some of those those instruments that you're sort of like, recording acoustically, don't necessarily play proficiently, but like, you want to use that sound and that vibe of the acoustic instrument? Do you ever do that sort of thing?
I've done it with guitar though. Even though I play, I've made like synths out of guitar, and I'll just use the sampler in Logic, which is very powerful. I'll just record. I think I recorded a note every fifth, and then you stretch that note to transpose over every semitone in that fifth. You adjust kind of the envelope of it, and I added some nice verbs and stuff, and it was like these really cool pads.
Nice.
Yeah, because I also did. I mean, the Chill show. I composed about 50 cues for them that they used, and I stemmed them out. So they used a bunch of that and they music edited about 150 episodes for that. But that was a meditation show, and they were going all around the world just shooting these sort of 5-minute guided meditations, and so they wanted all these meditation tracks inspired by different places in the world. And I mean, once you get through 10 or 15 meditation tracks, you're like, okay, I think I've exhausted like all my pad sounds in my DAW. And like even new VSTs, a lot of their pads start sounding the same, and you need something that's not too abrasive and like pretty relaxed, and that maybe you have to adjust so you can actually change chords and they don't clash too much, and and then you're somewhere else, so you need it to sound different. So I started making all these pads myself. So I did a bunch on guitar. I think I would use the EBow as well on an acoustic guitar and record a few notes in and kind of make my samples out of that. I picked up a little singing bowl, and
Oh, cool.
I would sample that. I even like my voice, and I created like some chants, and so that was a fun one.
Yeah, that sounds like, oh man, meditation music, just like vibes, just like weird sort of ambient vibe stuff going on.
Oh, that was great. I'd start like I think I was doing about 5 a week, and I'd wake up and I would write meditation.
Do yoga.
Yeah, right. I'd be in there stretching. And the best. That was a good few months. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I bet. Relaxing. Mm-hmm. So currently you're working at like for Disney Music Group as the asset management specialist.
Yeah.
So talk about the most recent gig that you got the full-time office job.
Did the full-time office job. I'm
tell us about how that's
I'm
going.
in a tower. So my wife works for Disney. So I kind of had my eye out on some different positions there, and then at that time Fender was winding down a bit. So I was like, all right, let me kind of see what they got. And then Disney Music Group is the record label for Disney. So they have two parts. They have Walt Disney Records and they have Hollywood Records. So Hollywood Records manages all of their artists, and then Walt Disney Records predominantly does all the soundtrack releases and manages Disney's catalog. So that's just a ton of music. So any soundtrack or any film or TV show they put out, all that music goes through this asset team, which I'm a part of, and I handle audio. So you're interacting with A&R and you're interacting with all the mastering engineers. And then we send audio off to our publisher, which is Universal Music, and they distribute the music to DSPs and stuff. So a lot of it's even QCing, so just knowing audio formats and all that stuff. So it's been really fun because it's all really great music. I've been able to interact with a lot of the composers that I've like admired for a long time, and you're emailing them like, hey, can I get this, or can I get this track, or hey, can you extend this? And another really cool thing has been Queen is their masters are owned by Hollywood Records, and they're a Hollywood Records artist. So one of my main responsibilities is also vinyl. So all the vinyl they put out, I QC all the audio and approve test pressings and stuff like that. But there's this mastering engineer, Miles Scholl at Abbey Road, and he cuts all the lacquer for Queen. So I've been able to, I'm email Queen's Camp, and I'm emailing Abbey Road and getting all that ordered and sent over and making sure everything's right there. So that's been a really fun part of the job.
That's so cool.
And it's kind of unique because, I got lucky. My manager is this really cool guy that's been there for over a decade, and he's just like the biggest audiophile and nerd about, Disney music, and he does a lot of preservation and archiving of classic soundtracks. So he's really kind of taught me about the different 2-inch tape, 1-inch tapes. There's DATs, DA88s, like all these old audio formats that Now sometimes we need to archive. Sometimes we'll get, well, a lot of times we'll get requests from all the different parts of Disney because they're like, hey, we need stems for this movie from 1994. And we don't have it. So we'd have to kind of look at our catalogs. We pull it from our vaults. And sometimes it's just like a box of these like DAT tapes. So you need to go through and you're literally reading labels to see like a cue name. And then you have to send it to your vendors to digitize. And then you're sorting through Pro Tools sessions to find stems of things. And so that part of it I really like, because that it's kind of like a hunt. It's like, okay, that's the challenge. Like, okay, find these stems from Devil Wears Prada. And you're like, okay, because usually they'll release a soundtrack, so you have the masters that are on the soundtrack, but then trying to go find, the orchestral session, it's like, well, where is it? And there's a few different vaults that they keep all their stuff in, and we have this whole DAM system, digital asset management system, where everything's kind of in there. But even finding something in this database of like millions and millions and millions of assets can be quite challenging.
Wow.
But that's been sort of a new learning experience, but I've really loved it. And it's kind of a cool place to be. Everyone's pretty chill at the office. And I mean, you're just around audio. Like I've been able to open up like Pro Tools sessions of Queen and like David Bowie and hear isolated vocals of like under pressure and things like that. I've played around with like The Little Mermaid and their orchestral sessions. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but no, it's all good.
We can edit that.
No. That's all fine. That's just for fun when I kind of open that up at home and stuff, and you can hear all these like orchestral sessions and just the strings isolated and brass, and you hear multiple takes of like The Little Mermaid, like what didn't make it into the film. You're like, what? That's crazy. Or you see a lot of these takes and it was one take. Or like a whole section was just one take. They're not chopping it up. There is no auto tune. It's just a fantastic like vocal performance.
Wow.
So there's some really cool things that I've kind of like researched and gotten into there. And now I manage a few preservation projects. So now Disney owns Fox. So we inherited all of Fox archives. Like, and there's just, there's a history, like a 100-year history of Fox music.
Jeez. I mean, Simpsons is Fox, right?
Yeah. Simpsons, Alien, Predator, like all that kind of stuff. And then, I mean, there's just old movies that go back to like the 30s and 40s. One of the preservation projects we're working on is digitizing all these old 1-inch and 2-inch audio tapes from these soundtracks. Mm-hmm. So we have a vendor who has to really clean them and transfer them.
That's so cool. It's like detective historian work with audio.
Yeah, and it's something where, I mean, in the job listing, it doesn't say that you need to be a musician, but being able to open up a session and knowing, okay, I know what an orchestra is comprised of, and you know what stems are. You're able to kind of go into these audio files. And so sometimes, like, if you would have asked me a decade ago, like, what are you going to be doing in 10 years? I don't think I ever would have told you I'm working for Disney doing audio stuff, like, for their record label. But just all the experiences you sort of compile and all that, like, knowledge sort of leads you to different places. Yeah. So, like, even studying recording technology, like, I would highly recommend anyone doing that is also a musician, or pick up some sort of instrument, or learn about music and learn about form and different things like that.
Yeah. So I guess that brings me to a nice final question. What advice would you give folks that are like in their 20s, like my students at the community college, that are just, they're excited about music, they're doing music technology, kind of dipping their toes into things. They might be a musician, maybe they're just interested in the technology side of things. What, just looking forward and drawing upon your experience in the past, like what sort of, words of wisdom or recommendations could you pass their way?
One, I would just say do it as much as you can. and like build your community. Like, I think at that time, like the reason I did that stuff so much is because my friends were also musicians or creative, or even if they weren't directly musicians, they're filmmakers who are interested in it. So they'd come over and hang while you're making music and while you're recording something, and then get them involved. Hey, can you scream? Can you clap? Can you bang this thing? And just make noise, make sound, and just do it as much as you can, and just try to really have fun with it. And I think, especially coming out of school, if you have the freedom to experiment and just like, I think you always want to make sure you're still having fun with it while you're doing it, because trying to make something in audio or recording or music strictly a job, like, will kill it 100% for you. So always make sure that you're still enjoying or having fun with whatever you're doing, but do it as much as possible. But you also have to build that community up, because you can't just sit at home and mix all day, because no one's going to know what you do. Even if you're the best mixer in the world, no one's going to hear your stuff if they don't know you. So go out, see shows. If there's a local music scene, like go to those bars, go to those shows, go see where people are jamming. I mean, now's the time to do it because you're in school. So all the people interested in all the same things are right around you. So just get together with people, record, jam, make noise. I mean, I'm assuming they can rent out studio space and stuff to record.
Yeah, we've got a studio where they can sign up and reserve time, and work on class projects or class adjacent creative projects that they might be interested in. So, yeah, they definitely have that.
So I'd be doing that as much as possible. Like, if there was one free opening, there shouldn't be one free opening in all of those bookings, because they should be in there all the time and doing it as much as possible. And you really you do have to like meet people and build sort of a network community around it. And just never, like, early on, never really close yourself off to new experiences or different things. Because, I mean, throughout all of this, there was even a moment where I built up a little sound gear to record audio in films. And I recorded interviews. I was on short films for friends, like, and that's not really what I did, but I learned about lavs and the little packs and receivers, transmitters, and then syncing stuff to camera. And, for a second, you're like, well, why am I here doing this? I know how to compose. I know how to mix and master. I'm a composer. I don't do field sound. But by doing that field sound, you're there working with all these filmmakers. And then on your break, it's like, oh, what are you up to? Oh, you're doing a short film? Oh, I compose music. Oh, cool. So there's just different experiences that you should always just try to get out there as much as possible. Plus, now knowing to do that, now I'm working somewhere where we have dialogue. Like, even at Disney, we'll be asked for like dialogue stems, and then you see, okay, well, this was the lav and this was the boom, and you kind of know. Well, I know how this was recorded because I did that a little bit, and you know the format, you know this. So things always come back around.
It's all connected.
Do it as much as you can. Diversify as much as possible. That's also really important. And just have fun with it.
Nice. Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you and chat. Thanks so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. And hopefully we'll stay connected and maybe do a few more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Future,
that was a lot of fun. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much.